Hello, this is David Starr. Welcome back to the Mastering the Marketplace series. And we're focusing on SaaS offers. Right now, in particular, we're going to be looking at implementing a very simple SaaS webhook so that you can get an idea of what's required just to get a webhook in place. Now, the first thing we'll have a look at is the Azure portal, where you can see I've implemented my webhook as an Azure function. Now, the URL of my Azure function is shown over here, and we can check that we've got that configured properly by going to Partner Center. And in Partner Center, we have the exact same URL set up for our connection webhook. All right, that means that our function will be invoked when the webhook is called by the Azure Marketplace. Let's head back over to our Azure function, this time in code. And what are we seeing here? Let's start at the top and notice that we have a function name of webhook. That is the latter part of the URL that we're putting in. And we're just taking an instance of logger, assigning that to a static field so that we can use it later in the Azure function. Now, the first thing we do is simply print a header into the log so that we can watch in our log the request payload come in. But first we print this header. So all that looks like is a notification that the SaaS webhook is fired, something's about to happen. And the next thing that happens is we take the request body and read it into a variable, which we then deserialize into a dynamic data variable. We pass that into the print to log payload function, which simply does what you might expect. First of all, it throws out what action we've received on this payload, but then it simply prints out the payload itself. So all we're doing here is we're going to be able to see what the payload is that comes in when the webhook is invoked. So how do we watch this log get written? Let's head back over to our function, and we can scroll down under the monitoring tools to our log stream tab. And in our log stream tab, we'll set our verbosity level at information level only, and we're connected to our log stream. So in theory, if our function behaves properly, we'll see the payload being written to this log. How do we then invoke the webhook? For that, let's head over to the client view of a SaaS subscription. Here's a SaaS subscription named SaaS Demo 11, as you can see in the top left corner. And it's currently in a subscribed state, as you can see here. Maybe we're done with this SaaS subscription because we're going to cancel it. So we'll cancel this subscription and say, I understand the implications. We'll just select other and not provide any feedback. So we'll cancel this subscription, and in doing so, eventually the webhook will be invoked with the unsubscribe event that just occurred. Let's jump back over to our log. You can see here that we got an action of unsubscribe. And I'll take this JSON and we can look at it for some interesting characteristics. I'll copy it into VS Code as some JSON there, and we'll go ahead and have it format the document so it's a bit more readable. Now, there are some interesting things about this payload that came in. The first thing we can look at is the action, which was unsubscribed, the status, which was succeeded. And now we see that the subscription entity itself came in on our payload. And we can look at that subscription status right here for the subscription that was given to us. And it is indeed in the unsubscribed state. This is exactly what a webhook notification payload is expected to look like, and gives us all the information we need to validate the request, which is what we'll do in our next video. But for now, we just wanted to have a look at what a payload looked like when it came over the wire. From this simple code, you can choose to do anything you wish, such as taking this payload and putting it into a database for future processing, something like that. But in any case, this is how a webhook is going to be set up and fired. In this case, implemented as a very simple Azure function. But you can imagine that regardless of what stack you're on, regardless of how you want to provide this endpoint, you're simply going to be receiving a request body to work with. All right, that was quick and dirty. So in summary, what did we do? We looked at a very simple SaaS webhook implemented as a .NET Azure function, and saw that regardless of what stack we're on, the workflow and the logic for receiving that payload is going to be about the same. So I want to thank you for joining me in this episode. And don't forget that you can find more videos, sample code, and even PDFs of the slides at aka.ms/masteringthemarketplace.